2, 1.
Welcome everyone to today's virtual Overview and Scrutiny Committee hosted by Bassett Law District Council. Given the current challenging situation we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, new legislation has been approved that enables councils to host virtual meetings rather than requiring members to be present in the committee chamber when making a decision. This keeps everyone safe by maintaining a social distancing etiquette and allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. It is very important that councillors can hear each other, so I will invite members in alphabetical order to confirm their attendance and in so doing test their broadband connection. Okay, I'm going to start with Councillor Jack Barker.
I don't think he's joined the meeting yet, Chair. Okay. I'll let you know if he does.
Thank you. And Councillor Sybil Fielding.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Sybil. Councillor David Challoner.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Ant Cultate.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor James Nash.
Present, John.
Thank you, James. Councillor Claire Plevin.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor David Presley.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Madeline Richardson.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
And I'm John Shepherd, Chair. Councillor Helen Tamblin-Saville.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mark Watson.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Also in attendance, we've got Councillor Susan Shaw, Cabinet Member for Community Health and Wellbeing.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Sue. And I'm just going to introduce the key officers. We've got Ellen Hinsley, Meeting Facilitator.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. James Lavender, Committee Clerk.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Jonathan Brassington, Policy and Communications Manager. Jonathan?
Jonathan, are you muted?
We can't hear you, Jonathan.
Do you want to come back to him, Chair?
I'll come back to Jonathan. Richard Gadsby, Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Present, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. And Liz Whittles, Policy and Scrutiny Officer.
Present, Chair.
Also in attendance, we've got Peter Clark, Strategic Leisure and Healthy Communities Manager.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. And we have Tim Wilson, Chief Executive of BPL.
I'm here, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening. And Glyn Davis, Contract Manager, BPL.
Yes, present, Chair. Good evening.
Thank you, Glyn. And Lindsay Churchill, Accountant for BPL.
Present, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening. Right, I'll just go back to see if Jonathan Brassington, are you here?
Chair, I believe he's having trouble connecting to the meeting, but we'll let you know when he...
Right, okay. Thank you. If a number of members lose connection, and if the meeting then becomes inquiry or the live streaming for public viewing fails, I shall adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow connection to be re-established. Given this is a virtual meeting, there is no corporate responsibility to detail a fire procedure as we ordinarily would. However, I'd like to highlight that this committee is live streamed on social media, so all participants, please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from the place of live streaming. Can I please remind members to switch off their microphones when not speaking? Okay, agenda item number 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies?
We have received apologies, Chair, from Councillor Robin Carrington-Wild and Councillor Deborah Merriweather.
Thank you, James. And we've got Councillor Sybil Fielding and Councillor Lynn Schuler subbing, so we're grateful to them tonight. Thank you. Agenda item 2 is to receive declarations of interest by members and not officers. Have we any?
We have no declaration of interest from members, nor have we received any declarations of interest from officers, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any members or officers who do realise they have a pecuniary interest, then you do declare it when that happens, and you'd be asked to leave the meeting and rejoin after the item has been heard. Okay, agenda item 3 is minutes of the meeting on the 15th of September 2020 on page 5 and 12 of your agenda. Okay, we're being asked to approve them as a true and accurate record of the meeting.
Move that, Chairman.
Is any member not in favour of the minutes?
Chair, I'm unable to vote on this as I wasn't present.
Okay, that's all right, Councillor Schuler. If there are no other comments, the minutes are therefore approved. Agenda item 4 is minutes for action and implementation list on page 13 and 16 of your agenda. Are there any questions from members? No, thank you. Agenda item 5 is the outstanding minutes list on page 17 of your agenda. Are there any questions on this? Thank you.
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, can we go
Councillor
back?
Presley.
Can we go back? I've missed something off, Chairman. On the minutes for action implementation sheet.
Yeah.
There was a bit about on page 14 about the thefts at allotment sites. I've contacted Craig and he's looking into that for me and he's doing a good job on it, Chairman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 10A to accommodate our guests and speakers for the annual scrutiny of BPL leisure management contract and performance, which is on pages 31 to 44. And I'd like to invite Peter Clark to present the report. And following this, there will be an opportunity to ask questions of Peter or of the officers from BPL. Councillor Susan Shaw is also here as the Cabinet Member for Community Health and Wellbeing. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, this is the annual report for the performance of BPL in financial year 2019-20. That's what the initial presentation will be, and in a moment I'll bring up the report. Following on from that, obviously, because we're in unusual times, we have followed some lines of inquiry that were submitted prior to the meeting, and that is what BPL will be covering in their portion of the presentation. And after that point, as we usually do, really, if any questions at all from members, we'll do our very best to field them. So I will first of all bring up the report. Hopefully everyone's able to see that.
Thank you, Peter. I can see that.
Julie, I'm aware members will have this report anyway, but I thought it might be useful for it to be in front of people. So as we can see, probably from section 3.2, the performance data which is collated in Appendix A does clearly show that BPL have continued to perform at a very high level, and that the direction of travel for improvement is encouraging and has continued through a number of years, in fact through the entire contract. In 3.3 and 3.4, we cover the fact that this success has enabled us to reinvest in the sites and to keep them both fresh and current, and that helps to encourage people to participate in physical activity. We've also seen that this exceptional work has provided a continued referral scheme for physical activity, as well as a cardiac rehabilitation phase 4. And these schemes now include both cancer and falls patients, which it wasn't previously possible to do. So it increases the outreach. What also helps is that we work in tandem with BPL to interact with the ICP, the CCG, and the new integrated wellbeing service, which is currently provided by ABL Health, and that's a commissioned service by the County Council Public Health Department. So the great advantage of this is that all of these actions are very much joined together. And we're going in the same places with the same messages and able to get great benefits for local people. In section 3.8, there are just a few examples there using the strategic headings of BPL to show what was achieved again in financial year 2019-2020. And I think a lot of these things are down to that partnership approach. I would draw members' attention particularly to the fact that a member of staff within the Bassett Law team actually has been on the BPL Board of Trustees this year, and I think it's great that a local member of staff has got a strategic role in BPL and is able to follow that up throughout the year. The financial success of the contract has also enabled us to make a number of investments in the sites, whether they be the larger improvements in terms of decoration or gym equipment, but also to be able to do things like replace some of the machinery and plant, which is an ongoing effort that we're making to reduce the carbon footprint of the leisure centres. So that's out of the surplus that's generated, being able to do something that protects costs in the future and also addresses the carbon issues for the council. So if we now just have a quick look under efficient and effective growth, we can see that those high levels of usage, which are included in Appendix A, have been maintained and have shown in excess of 1.1 million visitors. If we track that pattern of usage through the year, we can see, I'll just take us down to the appendix. And we're able to see in Appendix A that actually during financial year 1920, we were on target to exceed the previous year's 1.155 million visitors. If we look at the Q3 figures, we were in advance of the previous Q3 figures. But if members remember, we went into almost voluntary lockdown before we officially had to shut the leisure centres on the 21st of March. And that means approximately 3 weeks of usage was almost totally lost. So I think on a projection of where we were going, it's very reasonable to say that we were going to exceed the previous high point. This is shown even more clearly, I believe, with the number of disabled users at the sites. I think this has been one of the extreme successes of the contract, is the amount of people with disabilities who have been able to attend from a range of different sports and a range of different backgrounds. And some of those are shown at the bottom of this slide, where it shows that we've got things like the Kipper Club, Disability Dance Group, carers and the Care Hub, which was set up. And these things have particularly targeted some of our most vulnerable members of our local community. And to see them increasingly represented in the numbers is hugely, hugely encouraging. So just before I pass on to Glyn, if I might just take us back to the performance figures, and this is where we start to, I think quite rightly, not stop our journey at financial year 2019-20, because if I can draw members' attention to the right-hand end of this graph, we can see the disastrous effect of the closure as of the 21st of March, when we had to shut our doors. That stage will be covered by Glyn, I believe, in his presentation. But if I can just show you the figures for usage shown in Q1 of the current financial year are predominantly due to golf, which was able to open before, with being an outdoor sport that we could more easily set up social distancing for. And then Q2 starts seeing people returning to the leisure centres under the COVID secure schemes that were in place. But I think, again, we're looking to grow those figures as the year progresses. And I think Glyn will take us now through some of the things that are being put in place to secure that. Over to you, Glyn.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I'll just pull the presentation up. Is that on the screen for everyone? Peter?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, it's up.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Peter. Just a bit of an introduction. Obviously, I'd like to obviously thank Overview and Scrutiny for inviting BPL to present today. I will sort of, as contracts manager, obviously familiar with presenting to Overview and Scrutiny for some years now. We've also got Lindsay Churchill, our head of finance, who will pick up some of the financial elements of the presentation. And obviously Tim Wilson, our Chief Executive Officer, will sort of contribute as we go through and possibly pick up towards the end of the presentation a little bit about the contract. So that's probably enough just to get the thing going. So I've basically broken the presentation down into several parts. The first section, we're sort of going to look at the operational impact of obviously COVID-19. Which is the main slide. There's probably quite a detailed slide, and what I would say is we do have a number of sort of media videos that we will upload to the council portal, which we've obviously created to provide members of Overview and Scrutiny a more sort of live account of what's happening within the contract. So it's not something I can probably do today just because of the sort of technical side of things. But the expectation is that we'll do that over the course of the coming weeks. And for today's presentation, we'll just stick to the usual sort of presentation via PowerPoint. And I've tried to make it as sort of informative and as visual as possible, but without those sort of technical videos being included. So pre-lockdown then, so back to March, we introduced a number of obviously COVID safe measures. This was on the back of the pandemic status being, I think, announced on the 11th of March. It was formally announced that it was a pandemic. We did introduce the measures that included the social distancing. We actually cancelled quite a number of our more high-risk activities, such as the cardiac classes. Some of the referral schemes had to be cancelled due to the vulnerable nature of the participants. And ultimately, we followed the government advice and all the sort of public health advice that was around at the time. And as Peter's slides have sort of depicted, it did have a significant impact upon our sort of attendance levels back in March. And we were pretty much operating at about 50% of usual usage. We introduced, obviously bearing in mind, we had the social distancing issues within the workplace. So we introduced Microsoft Teams for all members of staff. We in effect relocated the head office all to work from home. And we basically continue to develop along the same lines of what we currently do, in actual fact, with members of staff all sort of continuing to undertake their training on a sort of virtual basis throughout the period back in March and throughout the lockdown period as well. Just in terms of the actual hits on the sites, we, through the government advice, closed our sauna and steam facilities on the 17th of March. The 20th of March was the next big sort of decision by government to close all the leisure facilities. And by this time, we'd also cancelled the school activity within the third-party use elements of the transformed schools. So that was on the 20th of March. We closed the golf course on the 23rd of March. We, in fact, did that slightly earlier. It was due to the pure issues experienced on site with non-adherence to social distancing. So we brought that forward, obviously in consultation with the council. And just to finish off there, we, as I mentioned, experienced a significant reduction in usage. But on top of that, we also lost approximately 600 of our members. I say lost 600 members, 600 members or thereabouts cancelled their memberships, all on the back of obviously the lack of sort of confidence in terms of continuing to socialise within a sort of public venue. So during lockdown and pretty much from the start of April, we experienced approximately 184 furloughed members of staff, the vast majority of which did volunteer to actually be furloughed, and we kept approximately 6% of staff continuing to operate through the obviously ongoing maintenance of the sites and keeping in contact with members and being basically available to react to all eventualities. Really, we experienced something like 3 sort of bona fide reopening dates, none of which came to fruition, but obviously I'll cover that on the next element of this slide. We did focus on allowing all members to freeze. We experienced that sudden rush of 600 members or thereabouts to actually freeze the memberships. So we took the corporate decision to actually freeze all our members, which in effect meant over 7,000 members from the 1st of April were put on sort of the long-term freeze membership option. At the same point, we started to develop our home workout element. So we had previously done some exercise programs online, but very sort of minuscule by comparison. We developed the home workout hub on a dedicated website, and content is continually being updated to this hub, which I'll pick up as we go through the slides. And we also introduced a 3-stage marketing campaign, which the first stage of the campaign was really to try and make contact with our members. And again, I'll show the videos on the portal, but it was very much a kind of winning members' hearts and minds and just keeping in touch with the facilities, encouraging them to take up the home workout hubs, all free of charge, and obviously looking forward to listening about how their activities, how they'd taken to the activities once we reopen. We were closed for sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Just need to go back. It's at the lockdown page. Can we see the lockdown page still?
I can see a slide on operational impact.
Okay. Okay, apologies about that. I've got the trigger happy mouse. So we continue to develop the whole workout hub, as I mentioned. We also decided that we would escalate some of our repairs, and we had a particular issue at Burcoats Leisure Centre where prior to lockdown we actually had an issue with the gym roof, and so we had to relocate a lot of the equipment to continue to operate prior to lockdown, but we in effect were able to work with the council and replace that roof during the closure period, and also start the Your Space rebranding that we actually promoted at the last overview and scrutiny in 2019. We continue to develop the COVID procedures. We were very much in touch with a lot of national governing bodies, including Community Leisure UK, UK Active, Swim England. The guidance was forever changing, but ultimately it was something that we had to do in order to obviously reopen our sites at the first opportunity. And we started to do that at Kilton Forest Golf Course initially on the 13th of May, with restrictions, and many of which still are in force. So we are not able to offer catering indoors. We still have certain restrictions out on the course, use of rakes, for example. But members certainly responded well to all the challenges brought by a new set of sort of rules to attend the sites. And once we were able to reopen, we developed comprehensive service plans, which included a new booking facility. As I already mentioned in the introduction, we have to track members and obviously their contact details. So there's in effect very little casual use at this moment in time. It's all through pre-booking sessions that are probably a lot shorter than what some of our members are used to. So some gym members, for example, are used to sort of working out for over an hour and a quarter, even 2 hours. But obviously we limited the sessions to allow for the additional cleaning and sort of protocols to take place in between those sessions. We continued along the marketing campaign with the second phase, which was time to feel good again. So we'd obviously got the 2 weeks notice by the government to allow us to open on the 25th of July, which was the first available date to reopen. And we did that successfully across Burcoats, Retford and Worksop Leisure Centres. The school facilities, the third-party use of the schools, we started to remobilise those schools in August, but in all honesty, we're still doing that. But we do have 2 pretty full school bookings at this moment in time. Feedback was great, positive from not just our members, but from the local media. And again, I'll pick up on some of those examples as I go through the presentation. And we continue to work with our wellbeing partners to remobilise services. The vast majority of activities did recommence on the 25th of July in some shape or form. But as we went through the month of August and coming into September, we were fully back operational with all of our referral schemes, including the cardiac rehab programmes. And in effect, we were sort of really pushing our partners to obviously mobilise their services and work in collaboration wherever we could. So the next slide is just some of the images that I've used to just show what we did during lockdown. We worked with our community partners. We provided food to the local food banks. We had a number of volunteers to the NHS for key workers. We reduced our sort of environmental impact in our leisure sites whilst we were closed, obviously saving energy by using pool covers, reducing plant room operations to a point that we could just keep things ticking over, and obviously being as efficient as we possibly could. In terms of the photo on the right, pretty proud of the fact that, you know, we as a company are very much engaged with a lot of governing bodies. Swim England is one of our key partners, and we're very much involved with the sort of writing of the sort of national guidance. Simon is one of our managers based at Retford, and he's the corporate aquatics manager. And in this particular clip, he's appearing on Look North, who were very keen to see how BPL were reopening the pools, and we were one of the first operators to do that, as I say, on the 25th of July. So other activities that we took part in during lockdown, we, as I mentioned, put quite a bit of effort into Burcott's Leisure Centre. It looks fantastic now. It's very much branded up with the Your Space colours. It really does look a completely different site, probably 80% complete in terms of the new rebranding, and like I say, it looks fantastic. And we are looking forward to organising obviously some official openings with the new Your Space brand just as soon as we possibly can, and obviously following completion of the rebrands. The next slide.
Sorry, Glyn, it's
Yes.
Peter here. Might I just say the slides aren't moving forward for us. I think they
They're
might
not.
be for you.
Apologies.
We've had the operational impact slide for the last couple of minutes.
Can you see that, Peter?
Sorry, no, we have nothing at the moment, Glenn.
Nothing. Okay, I'll just close it down and I'll start again. Can you see that, Peter?
We now have the front cover again, Glenn.
Yeah. Apologies. So which was the slide it froze on? This next one, this one?
Yeah. I mean, you described that one, Glenn, but it's good to see the visuals.
Okay. Okay, apologies for that technical hiccup. I'll continue with the presentation, just sort of bringing members up to speed with what we did during lockdown. So this is obviously the rebrand at Burcott's Leisure Centre that would have impacted should we have done it obviously during normal operating conditions, but ultimately we did everything we could to realise that rebrand during lockdown. The same applied to works up in Retford, in so much as we mobilised the contractor responsible working under Transform Schools to complete the refurbishment of our dry changing rooms, which hopefully you can see to the right hand side of this slide, and obviously bring the brand to life in the rest of the building. And again, that is about 75% complete. The next slide really moves back into the COVID environment. So prior to reopening, obviously, and following all the guidance and advice and systems that we generated through working with the likes of the national governing bodies, we implemented the safe systems of work. This is very much, and it speaks for itself, depicts the sort of protocols on site across all sites that are fairly standard. It doesn't really show the lengths that we've obviously gone to enable individual sports, whether it be badminton or swimming or lessons, and all the different elements that we've had to develop just to allow the safe operation, to take into account all the distances required between members and all the sort of conditions around that. We also introduced a dedicated mystery visit, specifically looking at the COVID measures to obviously ensure that we are compliant with those safe systems of work, as well as obviously the more obvious hand and sanitising requirements that we continue at all sites. We mentioned in the initial slide that we developed our home workout hubs. We froze all our memberships. We developed the hub. We've also introduced an additional app called Your Space at Home. We've used many of our instructors to record the group exercise classes. So whether members are unable to attend sites, they can actually access some of our favourite instructors, obviously whilst in their home. And these are just some of the images that we use to sort of just engage with members and keep in touch whilst we were obviously in preparations for our reopening on the 25th of July. And we do have a couple of customer testimonials included in there as well. The next slide includes one of the dashboards. So this is really a reflection of our memberships and how they've changed since March, prior to lockdown. This will obviously be available on the Bassett Law portal. To just run through the key themes, obviously our fitness memberships back in March stood at 5,181, and at the end of September 3,704. So a loss of about 1,500 members, which is the sort of more significant impact on our sort of membership base really. Swimming lessons, on the other hand, we've actually exceeded the figure that we had back in March at 3,538. And a lot of that is largely down to the fact that we've used some of the sort of sessions that were there for public swimming that we can't currently deliver because of the sort of nature of the session. So we're able to provide more swimming lessons. Golf, a real increase in memberships over the course of the period, an additional 100 members approximately. And these memberships are depicted on the Bassett Law demographic map, which again, it's just an overview at this stage, but members will be able to sort of interrogate this map at a later date once we provide you access to the portal. Very similar mixes, we still have similar membership, male and female splits, slightly more females than males. But that's just an example of one of the dashboards that, like I say, we'll be providing access to you. And the same with the next slide. This focuses on the cancellations during the period. So again, March to September, you'll probably notice we had a total of 2,283 cancelled in total, and fitness was about 1,631. So we've in effect managed to recoup approximately 700 members since we've reopened, just through obviously recontacting them and sort of encouraging them to come back to obviously the sites. And that is work that we obviously continue to do. We likewise have hugely reduced the amount of frozen memberships. Although we still offer frozen memberships, we've managed to sort of get that number right down to approximately 34. And again, you can see just on the maps which highlight where the frozen memberships are sort of originating from. And obviously it's a lot more of the sort of rural locations to the main towns of Retford, Worksop and Birkhouse. Okay, Lindsay, can I hand over to you for the finance slides?
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Right, well, this first slide shows two income graphs. On the left-hand side, we've got a graph that shows actual income month by month for this year versus last year versus a pre-virus budget. So last year's figures are shown in grey there. You can see those are the grey bars, and the pre-virus budget is the aqua line, which you can see just along the top. On the right hand side, we've got a graph here which shows the cumulative variance on income between last year and this year's income, and it's been broken down into its composite parts. So you can see on the far right hand side, the longest aqua bar there is fitness, and this means that fitness income is 600,000 down compared to fitness income for the first 6 months of the financial year last year. Just moving up that graph there, you can see swimming income. That shows that this income is 360,000 down compared to swimming income for last year. Golf is actually up, as we've mentioned on a previous slide. And so right at the top there, you can see that golf is up 38% compared to last year. So just to summarise what the financial results have been for these first 6 months of the financial year. Income has been generated to the tune of 650,000, but that is 1.2 million down compared to income which was generated for last year for the same period. Surplus is also down round about 450k compared to the surplus which was generated last year. So how does that actually translate into cash outflow since sites closed due to the pandemic? So that means that it has roughly cost just shy of 700k, and you can see that's just shown on the button there on the right hand side. Okay, Glenn, I'm going to ask you if you'll just flip to the next slide for me, if you would. So this slide, oh, I beg your pardon, sorry, I'm just catching up with my notes. So the next slide shows how we've attempted to draw on government aid in an attempt to minimise the impact of the pandemic. So back in March, the government began launching a number of support measures for UK businesses, and these measures were designed to be flexible, accessible and affordable. Now, the furlough scheme, or the coronavirus job retention scheme, opened on the 20th of April, and it runs for 6 months up until the end of October. Since then, there have been other schemes which have been launched in an aim to support businesses and to protect jobs. So in terms of the furlough scheme, and Glenn mentioned on the first slide, we furloughed 184 of our employees of the Bassett Law staff. So we estimate that up to the end of this financial year, when the present scheme looks likely to close, we should have recovered $500,000 from the government in terms of going towards covering those wage costs. The Business Interruption Loan Scheme, or CBILS as it became known, was launched on the 23rd of March, and this aimed to provide businesses with capital on favourable and flexible interest rates. There were also a number of small business grants which were made available to businesses via local government, and we were able to pull in a small business grant for one of the Bassett Law sites. So then other financial measures implemented by the government covered reductions in VAT, and you can see that just the last couple of points on that slide there. PPE, which is personal protective equipment, this is normally a standard rated supply, and it was made 0 rated, and that ran through until summer this year. There was also a VAT cut from 20% to 5% in terms of food and drinks from restaurants, cafes and pubs, and that runs through right up until the end of January 2021, until January next year. Okay, doke, Glyn, so if you wouldn't mind just flicking on to the next slide. So what this slide now aims to do is to show you what cash might look like over a 3-year period. So starting off from March 2020, the start of the pandemic, through to March 2023. So if we can just set the scene in terms of our forecasting process and the kind of assumptions that we've been looking to make, we began our forecasting based on a number of different scenarios at the beginning of March. We've drawn from pre-virus budgets to help us to create a number of different financial models, and we've used a number of assumptions to try and help us predict revenue, costs and resulting cash flow. So as Glyn mentioned earlier in the presentation, we've drawn from data from a number of different bodies, from UK Active and others, to try and predict what recovery rates are going to be like for this financial year and over the next couple of years. So just looking at this graph, I'll talk you through how we structured it here. We've attempted to show the passage of time by labelling up the axis on the bottom with financial quarters, and then you can see we've got the financial years just underneath that. So the graph starts off in the financial year 2019 to 20 at the start of the pandemic in March, and runs through to March 2023, which you can see shown by these quarters on the financial year 2020 to 2023. Okie doke. So the cash within the contract is shown on the vertical axes to the far left. So you can see that it ranges from effectively an overdraft of 200,000 right up to a cash positive figure of 600,000 up at the top. So down, if we follow the cash from the start of the pandemic, here you can see it's up at the top, just shy of 600k there. You can see that cash consumed between Q4 of last year, March of last financial year, through to Q1 of this financial year. That is what we've equated to be near on 700k, and that shows the impact of the closure of sites of the pandemic those first 4 months. We then see, as we go into the next quarter there, when our sites reopen, when our direct debits recommence, we can see recovery there, and we move up from effectively that overdrawn position into that cash neutral position. And this continues until the end of the year. In Q3, that's when we've built in our Your Space investments. So they've been shown in this model here on the forecast. In year 2, we see the contract recover, and that's when you can, if you follow the cash line there, you can see the cash recovery. In year 3, the contract continues to recover, and in this model, we've built in some investments into Q2 of year 3. You can see where that cash line just takes a wee bit of a dip there. So hopefully what the graph shows us is that in the face of uncertainty, We've attempted to predict what might happen given a number of conditions and a number of variables. We continue to monitor the situation and to build different scenarios up to try and predict those financial results and the cash flow. And we continue to work with the officers of Bassett Law Council to help us develop those strategies. Okay, thank you. Back over to you, Glyn, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. So as Lindsay obviously just mentioned, you know, we continue to monitor. One of the issues that obviously we've recently faced has included the new government tier 1, 2 and 3 restrictions. So just the very fact that South Yorkshire entered into tier 3 last week, it's already had a slight impact on obviously some of our members travelling from, in effect, South Yorkshire into Bassett Law. Excuse me. Sort of further promoting the need to develop our digital provisions and obviously to, in effect, provide a service, whether it be on site or obviously at home. This is just an example of how we're sort of moving the group exercise programme on. So I've already covered the fact that we have a home workout hub and various apps that support a lot more content that we had back in March, but we are in effect looking at providing a full live streamed service in the coming weeks, which this is just an example program. So in effect, the same instructors that our members are used to would still come into site to carry out their programs, and we would in effect stream it to people's homes. So a big improvement in terms of you know, dealing with future eventualities should we have further lockdowns and challenges similar to the current pandemic issues that we're experiencing. We're continuing to expand the recorded content as well. I did already mention that all of our sessions, our group exercise programs, are operating and pretty much have been right throughout August. We are continuing to increase the content of the recorded materials. We actually have a full day of filming over at Retford Leisure Centre this Saturday, just as an example, where again we'll be doing seated exercise sessions, Tai Chi sessions, office-based sessions, and again we're just you know, introducing more content as we go on. And the last one on this slide is just looking at the sort of future needs and aspirations of our members. Obviously, we've had no showers and limited access to sessions over the course of the 3 months that we've now been open. So over the course of the next month to 2 months, we will be looking to review those occupancy rates and capacities and extend the length of the sessions, if not allow for unlimited use, and reopen our changing rooms, which I'm sure many of our members will be looking forward to having a shower back on site sometime soon. So that's what we're doing in the very sort of near future. We also hope to complete the Technogym install. This is the gym kit. I know Peter mentioned it in his report earlier. We do have new kit that is awaiting to be delivered to both Workshop and Retford Leisure Centre. These will bring fantastic benefits to our members. They provide a much better sort of technical and virtual side of things, all linked to the new Your Space at Home apps. So our members will clearly be getting more out of their memberships as we continue to add, whether it be to the digital solutions or obviously on the on-site solutions. And we will also in the near future, Q4, complete the Your Space rebrand, the sort of 25-30% that is remaining, we hope to realise over the course of the next few months. Okay. The last slide really from me is just an example of how we continue to work with our local partners. It is at the front of everything in what we do. Wherever we can help within the communities, we try to do so, whether it be in a business context or community health and wellbeing. We're very much engaged with the ICP and the Integrated Care Partnership and the Integrated Wellbeing Service, the Your Way, Your Health. And I'm really pleased to sort of say that all of those new schemes, including the Integrated Health scheme provided by ABL, they're working in tandem with ourselves. We actually allow them access to our meeting room at Kilton Forest 1 day a week. And they also coordinate a lot of their services from our leisure centres, which they've literally just mobilised over the last couple of weeks. So it's been good to be involved right from the very start for the new contract for ABL, and we obviously look forward very much to it continuing. We're working all the while with the likes of Active, Bassett Law and Nottinghamshire. We're looking at various schemes that will be targeting the more vulnerable groups of our society. One particular example is a scheme whereby we're looking to provide a similar service to the sort of Marcus Rashford free school meals. We're hoping to be, if successful, with the funding application through Sport England, to be able to provide some free memberships to our young people within our local communities. And obviously, just at the bottom end of the slide, just to sort of promote the fact that, you know, we've worked very hard with the NGBs to date to obviously enable us to open as we have, and I think very successfully. Obviously, it's not a case of job done, it's a case of we need to continue to do so, and obviously make sure that we are just that bit ahead of the game and sort of able to, you know, deal with any future eventualities. But very, very positive, very pleased to be working with both the local and sort of national partners throughout. And Tim, did you want to mention anything on the contract before we sort of move on to the last questions slide?
Yeah, can do, Glenn. I mean, I think it just shows how good the team's been punching through this. And how much they've put in place, and the fact that we got open literally straight away, safe and active throughout this whole process. Something we've probably not mentioned on this presentation is that we've got a wellbeing group, and they've been active, and there's members from every single site on that wellbeing group that have been talking to people that are struggling. I make on average 26 welfare calls at the end of each week to my direct reports, and it's surprising who's struggling. It's not the ones you'd expect. So we you know, I think as a programme we need to look at this, think to these partnerships. We need to seriously think about how strong we need to push this one, and how much, you know, funding we need to put behind it to make sure that we deal with it, because suicide rates are flying up. But anyway, back to the contract. Sorry, Glenn. Yeah, the contract, we've been working very closely with obviously Craig and Peter. We've got a couple of minor issues that we're getting advice on, pensions and other boring things, but they're important to seal the contract. We're pretty much, I think Peter would agree, we've pretty much got it topped and tailed before we got shut down. But we got shut down. So the business model that we put forward as a charity to be able to continue managing the sites for the next 10 years was totally flawed. So we've looked at how we can top and tail it, and we've been positive, and the rebranding, I think, you know, will help us punch through it. So that's why we're trying to get that done sooner rather than later. The only concern I've got, and you know, is putting a brand in, which is your space, which belongs to BPL, when we've not got a contract signed with Bassett Law Council because we're out of contract. So we're actively working on that to get that nailed, and then hopefully over the next couple of months we can get your space in place, we can get the contract all signed up, and punch through the next 10 years, stroke 10 and an additional 5 years, if we're all happy with each other. I don't know many trusts in the UK that have got such a good relationship with a contract, and I hate calling it a contract. You're BPL, you're us, you're part of us, but technically it is a contract, and me and Peter were talking earlier, the amount of disputes that are going on left, right and centre, the amount of local authorities and that are putting their hand out and asking for millions of pounds to stay open or to reopen is just unbelievable. And we're in a position where, you know, both in Barnsley Regional and in Bassetlaw, we're punching through it. We've got solutions. We're all right. You know, we'll make it fit and we'll make it work. So that's about it, really, Glyn, on the contract. Nothing technical, just whereabouts we're at.
So sorry if I can beg the indulgence of the chair and also interrupt at that moment. We have had a question from Councillor Nash, which I think now is probably the right time to answer it. He said, can he ask how the experience in Bassetlaw is reflected elsewhere, for example, in Barnsley? And I know you just touched on that, Tim. I was wondering if you could maybe, you know, draw some, without naming names perhaps, but some examples from elsewhere where maybe they've had a different experience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I speak to different chief execs in surrounding areas. There's one that's very near to us, that's got a £4.2 million payout. There's one much more near to you that's got a £15 million payout. With regards to Barnsley, they're supportive. They have put a lot of our loans, because we've got some loans currently, they've put those on hold. Just installed a CHP unit, which is combined heat and power. I don't like to use acronyms, which is a different way to heat and ventilate the Metrodome, which is a massive building, and you know, it's been coal-fired for 25 years. So there's all those things going, you know, in place, and we've put forward, Lindsay will correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 460k towards that, so that we're protected from an electric point of view, because it's combined heat and power. So our electric's going to be sourced by that unit for the next 15 to 20 years. So that saves us money and it protects us, because we're not going to be, you know, looking at the increases. So even that loan or that payment has been postponed to next year, to be renegotiated as when and if we can pay it and how we can pay it. So they've been very supportive. And over and above that, Peter, I'm dribbling on now, but the board of trustees, they're very strong. They've been very supportive once we've come out of this. It was a bit of a problem when we're in lockdown. It was a bit of a problem, but we've now got board meetings taking place. We cancelled the one last week because of what happened in Barnsley, and we didn't want people coming out, and we felt it were appropriate to postpone it by a week. But yeah, up in Barnsley, it's strong. They've been very supportive.
Thank you. Might I actually return to proper protocol, having broken it now? Sorry, Chair. I think, although Glyn's final slide says it all, and through you, Chair, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Can I just say thank you for your very, very positive report, detailed report covering how well things were going just before the COVID crisis, and thank you to Glyn and Lindsay and Tim for their very detailed coverage. We gave you those key lines of inquiry on page 42, and I think you've covered almost all of those. So if members could just bear in mind that and focus on perhaps any questions you feel haven't been answered, or explore those a bit further. Thank you. Have we got any questions?
John, if I can just build on my point, I guess it was less around the management side. It was more around membership and customer behaviour, and whether that was different in Bassetlaw or whether that has been consistent in other sites, i.e. are we expecting the same sort of pickup across the board, or were there any anomalies in what we've seen in Bassetlaw resident behaviour that we as a council may then need to think about how we respond to make sure that we pick up the numbers as needed.
Yeah, do you want to take that, Glenn?
Yeah, sure. I mean, our sort of entire approach has been customer first, and to obviously gain the confidence back from the customers that obviously supported us for many years. It is surprising, you know, sometimes you do find yourselves talking to members, customers of all types, and you do slightly get surprised by the sort of concerns that some of them do raise just in terms of COVID concerns, and obviously the R rate. I think by and large, you know, we've been very successful. For example, returning 700 cancellations from the start of lockdown really to the sort of current date is sort of testament to that. So our strategies have been very much to ease on the side of caution, introduce sessions on a much more phased and gradual basis, and hopefully through the support of our members and our communities, they go away and tell their friends and families just how safe we are, and it is, you know, good to come back and get back involved with the you know, the physical activities that they once used to. I think as a company, because we do have reports on an ongoing basis, whether it be the mystery visits around COVID or just the sort of general experiential ones, our sort of scores that we still survey our members are very, very high. We've been getting 100%. We've been getting very few what we class as detractors, and I think it is working very well right now.
Yeah, I think if I could just interject, Chair, it might be pertinent, Glenn, for us to share some net promoter scores.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we will have. I could put some of the dashboards up from last year, but they're not. They're obviously for 1920. I know Peter's report did include a couple of comments about the 60% plus NPS scores, but members will be able to look at these dashboards, and it will give you sort of a general kind of barometer of customer satisfaction, and you will see it move up and down.
I mean, the satisfaction survey yesterday were absolutely astounding. Everyone were 10s. There were 1 8, and the 8 was somebody complaining that other people aren't putting equipment back and taking appropriate precautions. So it wasn't a kick at us. It was a kick at a customer, you know. So I was absolutely thrilled yesterday when I got that through.
If I can just add one more thing to that before we hopefully have answered this one. I think in terms of behaviours, Glenn mentioned it briefly. I think at the start of lockdown, people very quickly stopped using the facilities. We tried to keep the golf course open, but I think that due to people's lack of understanding or lack of knowledge of just how serious the thing was going to be, we had to close perhaps because of those behaviours. But since I think the industry were expecting something like 40% of people to come back when we reopened, and I think our first month was 74. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Glenn. So we did have this huge surge of people wanting to come back into the building, and their adherence to the very strict standards that are set has been really, really tremendous. Not only from what we've seen, but from what their fellow customers have seen, and that must help us now. We still have people who are very, very nervous, cautious, don't want to come out, and we completely get that. And so some of these products we're looking about going forward, everything being videoed, about live sessions online. This is partly to protect it if we do have further lockdown measures, but it's also to help out those people who still feel very cautious at this stage.
Thank you, Peter. Can I just ask you, Peter or Glyn, where we are on the contract at the moment? If you could just remind us, and also what is the financial impact on the council?
Right. So the situation with the contract is that as the former contract came to an end technically at the end of March this year. That contract was worded in such a way as that unless either party served notice, it continued forever in effect. So what we've laid on top of that is the new financial projection, which is the one that was approved by Cabinet. So the actual physical document needs signing off, but we've had to review a few of those sections in the light of what's happened, not necessarily to be changing figures or anything like that, but some of the wording now becomes somewhat outdated, and we need to make sure we've had special scrutiny. I think we're just a couple of weeks away from that, and it is something that the portfolio holder and the assistant chief executive have got delegated authority to sign as soon as it's ready. In terms of the financial impact, I did mention in the body of the report that actually the robust financial performance previously had enabled us to create a reserve, which has enabled us to buffer against that. And also we're in discussions with BPL at the moment about how we reprofile the management fee, which is set for a 10-year period, to not necessarily put new money in, but to reprofile so that that cash position is the one that's protected, because that's the one that enables you to open the door every day. I think that's covered it, has it not, Glyn?
I think just if I could comment through you, Chair, it's good that we're doing the same approach as what we did 10 years ago, which is using the technically the same solicitor. So we're not fighting against each other. We're not costing each other loads of money. We're just looking at finding something that fits for both parties.
Thank you.
Chair, just to let you know, Jonathan Braston has joined the meeting. He's managed to join us, and we've had a couple of questions from Councillors Schuler and Richardson.
Thank you. Councillor Schuler, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the key lines of inquiry, and down in number 14 and 15, it talks about the links between the reduction of membership, etc., and the impact that this has on obesity rates and deprived areas. Can you sort of fill us in a little bit more around that? And the 26% reduction that you've talked about, is that in predominantly deprived areas? And is there any possibility that this is down to people not having the finances to actually take the services?
Yeah, I don't mind picking that question up. Sorry. Yes, there was a map on the cancellations dashboard, and it does include more remote sort of demographic areas, the further away from the sort of likes of the three main leisure centres. It increases the risk of cancellation or frozen memberships. We have, as I say, right through the presentation, we did freeze all memberships, so there wasn't any members paying anything whatsoever, despite we continued to provide an element of service throughout. Some of the strategies that we're adopting at the moment include, like the reference I made to the vulnerable young people, and bidding for some funding to support free memberships for those young people. Those are the sort of that's the sort of partnership work that we're currently engaged with to try and obviously target some of those deprived areas. So if successful with those funding bids, we will be obviously looking to make young people from those more vulnerable areas or more deprived areas obviously free access to our facilities. It doesn't take away the issues that we have around transport. It doesn't take the issues that we have around accessing some of the activities that we used to do, for example, in community centres. So some of those facilities that we might have done, say, seated exercise in before at Beckingham, we're currently unable to access. It's probably relevant, but just before lockdown, we were very much talking to the likes of some of the care homes, Priory Court being the obvious one. And sadly, we're unable to currently tap into that market to provide some of the fantastic sort of virtual classes that we've got available to them, simply because they don't have the technology on site at this moment in time. But what we're trying to do is, again, work with our partners, including ABL, the Integrated Wellbeing Service providers, and, you know, address those really, really important issues. But obviously our hands are tied to some extent because of the restrictions around COVID. Our priority has been to return our members that are able to attend or return, and obviously work on from there. Okay.
So if I could just come back, if we're unable to gain the funds, the bidding process for the funds for vulnerable young people, if we're unable to bid for that money or unsuccessful in bidding for that money, can I ask, have we got a sort of a backstop plan for enabling young people from vulnerable areas, from deprived areas, etc., to actually access services?
I mean, I would just reiterate from a BPL stance, you know, it is one of our strategic aims to obviously improve the health and well-being of the communities. We don't expect to do that in isolation. We do it through work in partnership. The contract that ABL hold and have only recently mobilised because their resources were engaged elsewhere, more dealing with sort of the resources required to sort of deal with the NHS challenges and key workers and so on. But we are very much talking to them now on a sort of almost daily basis, and we are starting to influence, hopefully, how that service is extended across, you know, the district. So we will do it, whether it be in isolation or through the partnership work with the Integrated Wellbeing Service or even the Integrated Care Partnership. You know, they are groups that we do attend on a regular basis, and, you know, we sort of raise these challenges and try and come up with strategies, particularly around, you know, the lockdown period when it was, you know, really limited to outdoors. But obviously now we have the facilities, we're hoping to have a little bit more success bringing people back indoors.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, I think you had a question.
I've got two comments actually. Thank you. Not actual questions. I just want to commend the BPL and all the partnerships working, because the social and mental well-being is very important even before COVID. And I think they're doing a fantastic job in keeping up members and keeping them informed on online or any way that they can get socialising, because it's so important. The suicide rate, as Glyn said, has gone up enormous. So I want to commend them on all the work that they're doing with all the vulnerable people and trying their best to work with partnerships to get funding, as Councillor Schuler has just been mentioning, Glyn too. And also the point about the flooding, because it's a commend as well for being a quick response to helping people, residents, to use the leisure centres. Luckily so far, fingers crossed, we've not had flooding this time. I could understand how difficult, hopefully, the flooding issue is really going on, and we still talk about it within district, trying to resolve the way that it can be stopped or ways we can work together. And hopefully that no flooding issues will come forwards, plus the COVID, because I could imagine that the leisure centres could not be used then to get people together. But they're two issues that I really feel strongly about. And thank you very much for all the work, because it's not the financial issues at the end of the day, although I know we have to keep these centres going, but it's the members' well-being and their social and mental welfare. And thank you very much for all the work that's gone forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson, much appreciated.
Thank you. On that point about health, the work you do with GPs and with health authorities, and as Councillor Richardson said, that's really crucial, isn't it? I wonder if there's any plans to sort of expand that, or have we got back to where we were before? Because clearly helping people recover and making them stronger to resist illness is crucial.
Perhaps I'll pick this one up, Chair. BPL are one of our partners that we work with to create this whole suite of opportunities, whether that be through the Get Out, Get Active system, which is currently operating, whether that be ABL Health and their involvement actually in something we haven't mentioned so far, which we are a slightly distant partner, which is the Food Trailblazer programme, which is operating by Public Health. It's going to be a pilot in Harworth operating out of the Children's Centre, and this is trying to deal with those societal issues of obesity and ill health at a very early age with very young families. So a particular group has been identified. If we can work with those groups from a very early age in those young families, we then can take them on into the next stages so they can see what else we're able to do. And then it's to our linkages with the active communities team, who deal a lot with the sports clubs. So then we not only have a way to engage with these people, be them from any age group, but actually we also have a route into physical activity for them. And, I know this isn't the topic of this evening, but the active communities team has been doing an awful lot to help clubs stay afloat in this period in time, keeping them informed of what's been happening by national governing bodies, putting them in touch with some of the funding streams. We have actually had a larger than the mean value for a district council come into local clubs to support them through this time, and actually they are as important. I think some of the statistics show us as much as 80 to 85% of physical activity will happen outside of our facilities. It will happen in local clubs, and BPL support that. These things are not siloed into different areas. These are people genuinely working together for the good of local people. And one of the things I would commend everyone for is not seeing those barriers and those silos, and just working together. And I have gone on a bit, and I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Peter. That's excellent. Good news.
Chair, sorry to break in again. Councillor Richardson has raised her hand again.
Okay. Councillor Richardson. Maddie, if you've got a question, Councillor Richardson.
Sorry, I'm back. Yes, thank you, Peter. As you know very well, we have Dukeries Academy for Gymnastics. The council have been absolutely excellent on giving advice. We've opened the club. I've had to go back coaching because we have to social distance so many children, and we have worked hard to get them back. So we have got about 80 now back in out of the 130. Because of the distancing, we can only have so many at a time. But yes, that we have had really good help, and thank you very much, Peter, for that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Could I just ask about the golf? Because I know in previous years it hasn't necessarily been the best performing part, and this is quite a turnaround, isn't it? And I wonder whether you wanted to comment on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're obviously really pleased with the way golf obviously has sort of reacted. We have generated not just the additional 100 members, but we've probably doubled the actual amount of casual pay and play as well. Initially, we obviously were able to provide additional access to our fitness members that were frozen. So just by way of obviously encouraging them back to do something outdoors, we were able to do that for a number of our fitness members. We currently have restrictions, so a large part of the sort of golf activity at Kilton Forest includes a trading element, so it's a little bit disappointing that we can't sort of return those levels of activity to what they were. So in effect, the sort of experience for a golfer is slightly reduced, because obviously we're not able to provide the indoor facilities as we once did. But we are still obviously looking at how we can better accommodate things moving forward. So we did actually start to do a slight amount of catering indoors. But obviously it's the functions that are a real sort of part of the sort of makeup at Kilton Forest, and I think the maximum we can have at any one time at this moment in time is 15, so that's slightly disappointing, but really pleased with the way that the golf course has sort of responded, and hopefully the new members will stay with us longer than just the sort of season, really. Yeah.
Thank you, that's good, a good news story. Have we got any more questions from members? No? In that case, I'd just like to thank you all very much, the team from BPL and Peter, for excellent presentation. And as usual, I will say you're welcome to stay, but I understand if you now want to leave the meeting.
Chair, might I just draw your attention to one of the items, one of the recommendations. It is regarding the use of the portal. And we will, in the next couple of weeks, be making that active and available to members of this committee, and you will be able to view it live. We will have to get over the small hurdle of providing some sort of training or insight, but that was an outstanding action from last year. So I thought I'd just let you know where we are exactly with that.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Yes, if I can just draw everybody's attention to those recommendations on page 34, that 6.1, that the report be noted and the excellent performance and service delivery over the past 12 months be recorded, including the efforts to reopen the leisure centres and the golf course safely and effectively, and that members approve the use of the new performance management dashboard for monitoring the leisure management contracts and reporting to future scrutiny committees. Are there any objections to those recommendations? No, thank you. So, as I said before, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your kind words.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
See you again, and best of luck with it all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Moving back to the agenda, we are now on item 6, the forward plan, on moving back to page 19. Just to remind members, as soon as you receive your agenda, you can ask the clerk to contact the relevant officer to provide a briefing note on a particular report on the forward plan, and or invite them or the relevant cabinet member to attend the meeting. And of course, if it's marked as a private and confidential decision, then we can't discuss it in this section of the meeting. And members should note that the 2 key decision reports for the Extraordinary Cabinet of 23rd of November are in fact confidential items. And the Head of Housing has provided a briefing note on key decision 497, the Radford Street site. That is a confidential item. Does any member have any questions on any other forward plan items? No, thank you. We now move to item 7, which is key decisions of Cabinet, 13th of October, page 23 to 30. Starting on page 23, we've got ICT strategy for Bassetlaw 2021 to 2024, key decision number 811. Resolved that the ICT strategy for Bassetlaw 2021 to 2024 be approved and that Cabinet receives an annual update on progress against the implementation programme. Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone against endorsing this key decision of Cabinet or wishing to abstain?
There's a question from Mark, I think, John.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. I can't always see those in chat. Mark, Councillor Watson.
Hi, it's just a couple of minor points, John, really. To highlight one of the things it does say in the report, which it does point out the lack of Wi-Fi facilities in some of the council premises. And hopefully at some point in time, we'll be able to return to having meetings at both Retford and Worksop town halls. And the lack of Wi-Fi in both of those facilities is a hindrance. It does also mention the implementation of Office 365. And I think that's one thing that does make the use of our iPads rather more difficult. I find things much more reliable working on my laptop or desktop with a proper version of Office rather than the 365 version. But they were the only two things I pulled out of it.
Okay, thank you for those comments, really. Of course, we haven't got an IT officer here to answer any technical questions. If I can just ask again, then, is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? No, thank you. That key decision is endorsed. And on page 24, there's the medium-term financial plan update 2020/21 to 2024/25, key decision 788. Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? No, thank you. That key decision is endorsed. On that same decision, it's resolved that the contents of the report, particularly the difficulties facing the council in preparing the medium-term financial plan and the uncertainty around the future funding, be noted. Again, I'll just ask again: is there anybody against that decision or wishing to abstain?
Chairman, I'm not against it, but it is going to impact on us. As long as COVID keeps going, the worse it's going for the budget. And we need to make sure that the government knows that and looks after councils all over the country.
Thank you, Councillor Presley. Yes, it's sober reading, isn't it? The financial report. Because of the COVID impact. Okay, that key decision is endorsed. Moving on to page 25, we've got the Housing Services Annual Compliance Review, key decision 833. Resolved that 1, the work carried out during the past 12 months to address the issues and recommendations contained in the Housing Compliance Review Action Plan be noted, and 2, that a Housing Services Compliance Report be brought back to Cabinet on an annual basis. Does anyone have any questions on this key decision that was made by Cabinet? And is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? No, thank you. The key decision is endorsed. And on page 26, there's homeless and rough sleeping update, key decision 834. And it was resolved that, one, the costs associated with the provision of additional temporary accommodation during COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent pressure on homeless budgets be noted. Two, the provision of severe winter emergency accommodation provision to prevent street deaths associated with rough sleeping and to provide a pathway to addressing individual housing needs be supported. And three, depending on the outcome of the Next Steps programme bid, the purchase and renovation of a property suitable for the short-term use of rough sleepers and the employment of 2 additional tenancy sustainment officers for a fixed term of 3 years to identify housing support pathways and encourage those rough sleeping to engage with the accommodation offer be match funded. And 4, thanks be recorded to the strategic housing team for progressing this agenda and the large amount of challenging work undertaken, which has achieved a high level of success in supporting and continuing to support homeless people. Now, we've had a briefing note on this key decision that's been sent to members following a question from Councillor Coulthard. Are there any other questions on this key decision? Well, my only comment would be that this is certainly going to be needed. I hope this funding is successful. I'm sure you've all had contact from people who are facing homeless or worried about the financial situation.
I might have missed it, John. Do we know when that we'll find out about the bid?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if there's anybody here who can answer that specifically, but we can get a written update. Richard, I don't know if you have any more information.
I don't have any more information, Chair, but we can ask the officer for an update if that funding comes through.
Thank you. That would be good. If there are no further questions, I'll just ask, is anyone against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain? No, that key decision is endorsed then. Thank you. And the bottom of page 27, we've got the BDC response to the government white paper, reformation of the planning system, key decision 838. And it was resolved that the detailed comments within Appendix 1 of the report, this was in the Cabinet papers that members will have seen, is approved for submission as the Council's response to the Government's White Paper, Planning for the Future. Does anyone have any questions?
I've got a question, Chairman, but got a comment on it.
Yeah, Councillor Presley.
It is a very important document that we've had, and I got a copy of the response for myself to look at. And yes, there's a lot of comments on it, but I think we all need to read this and look at it and see what's going to happen in planning for the next whatever years you're going to call it. Whether they adopt this or we don't. There's a lot of people against it, I know. But if it's adopted, we need to know there's going to be a long time before anything changes again, Chair. And we may have to go back and look at our local plan again if this is all adopted. So we might be delayed on our local plan again.
Mm. Yep, thank you for that comment. It's clearly very significant and important, and yeah, I hope members have had a chance to read that. in the cabinet papers.
John, could I ask, just building on what David has said, are there any, you know, if there are any plans for a briefing for members on this, because it is a major issue, and I know lots of members will have strong views on it, and it will have impacts not only on the Bassetlaw local plan but also on the neighbourhood plans that we're all involved with, and to have sort of a wider briefing for members on this, I think would be very useful.
I think that's a good question. I think we should note that, and that would be a briefing for all members on this. Yeah. So Richard, if we make a note of that, and we're saying that's not just for overview and scrutiny members. I did actually ask if there could be a planning officer to talk about this, but there wasn't any available, and also we didn't need a briefing note because I think the cabinet papers are very thorough in it, explaining what the issues are and what our response is.
Can I say, Chairman, I endorse what Mark says about that, for the local plan and the plans for communities as well. It's very important that we get it right.
Richard, I don't know if you want to comment on that about how we approach that, whether we sort of in terms of briefing for members.
Yes, Chair. The only thing I could suggest, because obviously we did speak to the officers about this, and obviously there was no one able to attend the committee this evening. But it might be that once the actual full implications are known on this white paper, a briefing is brought to overview and scrutiny at that point. So that would be my suggestion, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I was thinking that as things develop, as it evolves, we will need a briefing for overview and scrutiny. It may be that it's decided that all members should have a briefing, but at least we can ask as overview that we have that. Thank you.
I think it would be popular with most of the members on the council that we have a full briefing on this, because it is such a big issue for us all.
I think that's right. I think we should note that it is of concern to all members.
I was just going to say, John, I assume it will come up on at the local. We've got the local plan update, haven't we, on the 3rd of November? I mean, I'm assuming we're not going to go doing a further consultation if there's going to be fundamental changes to the local plan. So I'm wondering whether we're going to be getting an update, or at least get a bit of an understanding of what this means for the local plan at the session on the 3rd, which is next week, isn't it?
Well, the extraordinary cabinet and overview is now on the 23rd of November.
But there's a briefing, isn't there, next week on the local plan?
All right. Yeah.
I think it's on Tuesday the 3rd at 6 o'clock. It's the one that was rescheduled. We may need something in addition, but I would hope that we will get a start to understand how these things are going to interrelate, because as David said, it is going to make a big difference, and a lot of effort's been put into that local plan, and I don't think we should be going out and doing another consultation. It's all going to get ripped up again not long afterwards.
Yeah, we clearly need to understand the implications of this for our local plan, don't we? And like you say,
excuse me, John.
Yeah,
it might be an idea. Thank you. It might be an idea if, obviously, I agree with it coming to overview and scrutiny, but one of the things that the council does insist on is that they used to have one session at Workshop and one at Retford, which was the code of conduct training and things like that. I think this could be fetched in with that, where it's mandatory that all councillors do have to attend it. So that could be that could be when it could be put out to all councillors as an addition, if you know what I mean. Rather than calling a special meeting about it, it can be put on that this is, you know, this is the effect, because it is going to have effect on neighbourhood plans, and it will have an effect on the local plan, because every time we seem to be getting to the end of these kind of issues, John, Chair, they change it again, and we're back to square one. And, you know, it might have took 3 years hard work to get to a certain point, and then next thing, we're 3 years behind again because somebody in central government thinks it's a good idea to change everything. You know, I mean, there is a lot of hard work done in the communities through consultation that this council has took on board, and we have listened. We have listened to the public, you know, especially in the local plan where some things had to be taken out, and they've had to look at another area where they want to develop a green village. You know, they have listened to the people, so they can't take that away from us. But as ward councillors, we all need to be up to speed, like David Presley says, and like Mark said, and even James, with what is actually happening and the effect. Because it's all right, parish councils going out and doing the hard work with neighbourhood plans and getting it and bringing it forward through the system, for it to be shoved to one side. Oh, that don't matter now. So it's important that this message comes out loud and clear, and so that people do understand the effects of this new 3-tier kind of system for planning what they want to bring in.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that comment. So we've noted that we would like a presentation on the implications of this as it develops, that members are kept up to speed. Thank you. Are there any other questions on this key decision?
Councillor Fielding's indicated she'd like.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Sybil Fielding.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely agree that we should have briefings and be up to date as we possibly can be. But I don't think we can make it mandatory.
Oh, no.
As far as the Constitution is concerned, it's very clear of what is mandatory training, and that is code of conduct. And if you're on either planning or licensing, you've got to do the training appropriate to that. I would encourage everybody to attend across the council briefings on that are given. But unfortunately, as I say, it is down to the individual. Due to the Constitution, it can't be made mandatory.
Thank you for that, Sybil, Councillor Fielding. Yeah. I'm now going to ask if anyone is against endorsing this decision or wishing to abstain. No, thank you. That key decision is endorsed. We're now moving on to item 8, waiver of call-in, decision taken without sufficient notice. There was a Cabinet Member DD number 12 of 2020/21, delivery of a market at Harworth. I agreed a waiver of call-in for this delegated decision. The Assistant Chief Executive explained that this delegated decision was done as a matter of urgency, as we needed to have approval ahead of the first market, and there'd been a slight delay in finalising the heads of terms upon which arrangements were based. We were, however, satisfied that this did not give rise to any concerns or conflicts with our other markets. Okay. Item 9 is possible call-in of decisions made by Cabinet or by Cabinet members. There are none. And then we have item 11A, Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme 2020-21, pages 45 to 54. I'm passing over to Richard Gadsby now to outline the report and answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just a quick update on the chosen themes for overview and scrutiny this municipal year. In terms of the flooding review, we're advised that all the Section 19 reports have been written for Basset Law, and there'll be a further report on flooding which will be prepared by the Assistant Chief Executive and reported to Cabinet. So that being said, it's therefore proposed that we begin preparations for the review, and part of that will be to select a membership of Scrutiny Task and Finish Group. So we can talk about membership of that group when we come to the recommendations at the end. In terms of the next topic that Scrutiny identified, children and young people. Obviously, we agreed a scope at a previous meeting, and that review is scheduled to take place in February 2021, aligned with the scrutiny of the Community Safety Partnership. I know Councillor Shepherd wants to give an update on cycling, so I'll just move to the other reviews before we bring that. In terms of the East Midlands Ambulance Service, we've been in contact with them, and they've agreed to attend a committee on the 15th of December to give an update to the committee.
Hooray!
Thank you, Council President.
And obviously, following the session that we just had with BPL, it's up to members of the committee whether they want to make any further recommendations in regard to that review. So if I can just bring Councillor Shepherd in to give the update on the cycling scrutiny review.
Yeah, just before I do that, Richard, just about the BPL, we obviously thank them. I wouldn't whether we should specifically make sure that's in the minutes, you know, commending the work of Peter Clark and his people and the BPL in the way they've responded to the COVID crisis and getting the leisure centres back up and running. You know, I think that's been excellent. Yes, on the cycling, we were hoping to get a cabinet.
Can I just make a point on the BPL one?
Yes, yep.
It's a good one we do, but I think myself we didn't give it justice tonight because it's a long one, and I think we ought to have it on its own. When we have a meeting like we have with the other one, I think it should be a meeting on its own so we can concentrate on BPL and members can have lots of questions then they can ask at the end of it. I wonder if you think about that, Chairman. Don't need to do it tonight, but think about it.
Thank you for that comment. We'll think about it in the future. I did feel that it was a very thorough presentation, and I thought members had a chance to ask the questions. But you know, it does mean quite a long agenda sometimes, quite busy. I take the point you're making. Yeah. Okay. So on the BPL, we're not making any specific actions or recommendations. On the cycling, we were hoping to get the cabinet response to our cycling review recommendations. We haven't got it. It has been delayed, you know, since it was reported in February. The timing was unfortunate just before the COVID crisis. Yet in other ways, you know, cycling has had a bit of a boom because of the effects of the lockdown, and the government has made funding announcements and so on. So there also seemed to be an opportunity there in terms of timing. So it is a bit disappointing. But the chief executive's position is that, as we've already heard tonight, the finances of the council are in a very difficult situation. Officers are fully pulled out with the COVID situation. So recommendations that will involve officer time or money are basically very difficult. So they're looking to see what they can do, because as the members on that subgroup know that they spend a lot of time on this, and you know, they're hoping they get a serious considered response, and that not all the recommendations did involve money. So you know, we are looking forward to that response, and I continue to talk to the the leadership where I think there is the political support for this, but I'm sure everyone can appreciate the current situation and the immediate needs of the COVID impact. Richard, have you got any more points you wanted to make before I move to the recommendations, or have anybody else got it? Any comments?
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you. The recommendations are that the committee agree the approach to the work programme as set out in the report. And 8.2, the committee agree the membership of the flooding task and finish group. So here we are. I've already had a volunteer from Councillor Presley who's made contact with him wishing to be on this task and finish group. Have we got any other volunteers for the group?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to be on that if that's possible.
That's Councillor Richardson.
Yes, please, Chair.
Chair, I would like to be on that, please.
Yeah, Councillor Helen Tamblin-Saville.
Thank you.
Yes, John, I'd like to be on it as well if possible.
Yeah, Councillor Mark Watson. I think I'd like to be on that group as well, as you know, my ward was affected by the flooding. Is anybody else who would like to join it? How many have we got at the moment in terms of names? Is that 4 or 5?
We've got 5, Chair.
So perhaps one more.
I'm happy to, John. I'm pretty snowed under at the moment, but I was, you know, I do think the rural dimension needs thinking about as well.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy. I guess my question is probably how do we keep people updated?
James, I'm very similar to James at the moment. That I'm being candid in my personal life as well. I'm trying to keep up. I'm happy for me and James to sub as appropriate as the final place, if that's all right, Chair. Because I do think that rural dimension is correct, but I'm really reluctant to overpromise and underdeliver.
Right. Okay. So perhaps James first place and Councillor Coulthate willing to.
If you can.
Yeah, we can tag team on that. We're neighbouring wards, but yeah, as I say, I'd love, you know, like the cycling thing. I'll do what I can. It's just especially when we're meeting often middle of the day. It can be a bit challenging.
I think I don't know what Richard thinks, but we'll probably go towards the end of the day to help people who are working. But
well, I suspect this time we'll be a lot more flexible, won't we? Because we did a lot of in-people meeting and in-person meetings, and that won't happen this time. So let's go with that, and hopefully, if members are comfortable, I'll do what I can.
I think one of the lessons and kind of silver linings is how we've become familiar with this virtual technology, and I think it's got great potential for these task and finish groups. Because of people's other commitments, and it's easier for them to attend if they're working from home rather than making a special journey from the rural part to a workshop. So that's good. Is that okay, Richard? So we have got 6 names with possibly Councillor Coulthate coming in, but we don't want more than that, do we? I think, but it's good to have at least 6 in case, you know, there's 1 or 2 can't make it, and then we've got, you know, a problem if we only had 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The only thing that I would just query is the voting rights of all members on the working group. So if I might suggest that all members have equal voting rights on that working group, just for clarity, including Councillor Nation, Councillor Coulthate.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Can I just say, Chair, please? I think I'd definitely support having 2 members from rural, because we desperately do need them in, and the commitments they have to come first. So I think that's a real good idea, and I think they should also have all voting rights, as Richard said.
Yep. Thank you for that comment. Is that okay then, Richard? Have we got a workable?
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll schedule a first meeting with the assistant chief exec to sort of scope the review, and that will inform how future meetings go on and how many meetings we need to have and when they'll take place. So, yeah, thanks to everybody.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. And recommendation 8.3 is committee determine whether any further action is necessary in relation to the review of BPL contract performance. And we decided there isn't any further action. And 8.4, members are advised to contact the Policy and Communications Unit should they have any queries regarding future meetings. So is anyone against that course of action or wishing to abstain? Thank you. The recommendation is carried. We move to section B, items for discussion in private. I don't believe we have any. So key decisions, there are none. Waiver call-in decisions taken without notice, there are none. Possible call-in of decisions of cabinet members, there are none. Item 13, any other business which the chair considers to be urgent, and I don't have anything else to add. So that concludes the meeting, and thank you all very much for your patience and your contributions tonight. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Chair, for a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.